What if I told you that every emperor who ever lived was actually powerless? What if the greatest rulers in history understood something that most people spend their entire lives running from? The most profound truth about power is this: the moment you chase it, you lose it. The instant you grasp for control, control slips through your fingers like water. Think about it. Really think about it. Every dictator who ever lived died afraid. Every tyrant who terrorized others spent sleepless nights terrorized by their own thoughts. They built empires on fear, and fear consumed them from within. But there exists another kind of emperor, one who rules without force, one who commands without speaking, one who conquers without fighting. You have met this emperor before, though you may not recognize him. He is the person who walks into a room and shifts the entire atmosphere without saying a word. She is the individual who remains calm while chaos erupts around her. They are the ones who make decisions from a place of clarity when everyone else is drowning in confusion. This emperor lives within you. Right now, this very moment, most people live their entire lives as prisoners in their own minds. They wake up each morning to the same mental prison guards: worry, anxiety, anger, fear. These guards patrol their thoughts, control their emotions, dictate their actions. The prisoner believes he is free because he can choose what to eat for breakfast, what clothes to wear, which route to take to work. But these are the choices of a slave, not an emperor. The slave reacts, the emperor responds. The slave is pushed around by circumstances. The emperor moves with purpose regardless of conditions. The slave fights against reality. The emperor flows with what is while shaping what will be. You see this pattern everywhere. Watch people in traffic. Observe their faces, their postures, their energy. Most are being controlled by external circumstances. A slow driver ahead makes them angry. A red light makes them impatient. Road construction makes them frustrated. They have handed over their inner state to things completely outside their control. This is not living. This is surviving at the mercy of randomness. The unconscious person is like a boat without an anchor, tossed by every wave, blown by every wind. They mistake this chaos for excitement, this reactivity for aliveness. But the emperor knows better. The emperor has found the eye of the storm. Where is this eye? Where is this center of calm that remains untouched by the hurricane of daily life? It exists in the space between your thoughts. It lives in the between your breaths. It dwells in the stillness that exists before you react. Most people have never visited this place. They live on the surface of their own consciousness, skimming across their experience like a stone across water. They never sink into the depths where true power resides. The first foundation of your inner empire is stillness. Not the stillness of inactivity, but the stillness of complete presence. The stillness of a mountain that watches storms pass without being moved. The stillness of deep water that reflects perfectly because its surface is undisturbed. This stillness is not something you create. It is something you uncover. Like an archaeologist carefully brushing away dirt to reveal an ancient treasure. You must gently remove the layers of mental noise to find what was always there. Right now, as you listen to these words, that stillness is available to you. It exists beneath the chatter in your mind. It exists beneath your planning and worrying and analyzing. It exists beneath your hopes and fears and judgments. Can you feel it? Take a breath, not a forced breath, but a conscious breath. Feel the air entering your body. Feel it filling your lungs. Feel the breath at the top of the inhale. Feel the air leaving your body. Feel the at the bottom of the exhale. In that tiny space between breaths lives your empire. Most people breathe unconsciously their entire lives. They take roughly 20,000 breaths per day without paying attention to a single one. This is like having a direct line to the emperor and never picking up the phone. Your breath is the bridge between your unconscious patterns and your conscious power. It is the rope that can pull you out of the prison of automatic reactions and into the freedom of chosen responses. Watch a master craftsman work. Watch a skilled surgeon operate. Watch an accomplished musician perform. They all share something in common. Their breathing is conscious, controlled, connected to their actions. They have learned to synchronize their inner rhythm with their outer expression. This is what it means to build your empire from within. The external world will always present challenges. Markets will crash, relationships will end, bodies will age, plans will fail. The unconscious person sees these as disasters. The emperor sees these as weather patterns, temporary conditions that have no power over the unchanging sky of consciousness. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who experiences your emotions. You are not your circumstances. You are the one who responds to your circumstances. This distinction between the experience and the experiencer is the foundation upon which all inner empires are built. Most people are completely identified with their mental and emotional experiences. When they feel angry, they say, "I am angry," instead of "I am experiencing anger." When they have worried thoughts, they say, "I am worried," instead of "I am having worried thoughts." This identification is the source of all suffering and the root of all powerlessness. The emperor knows the difference between weather and sky. Anger is weather. Fear is weather. Excitement is weather. Sadness is weather. These emotional states come and go, like clouds across the sky of consciousness. The sky remains unchanged, unaffected, eternally clear. You are the sky. Learning to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them is like learning to watch a movie without forgetting you are in a theater. The drama on screen may be intense, but you remain seated in your chair, aware that what you are watching is not your reality. Your thoughts create movies. Some are action films full of worry and planning. Some are romantic comedies full of hope and fantasy. Some are horror movies full of fear and catastrophe. Some are documentaries replaying past events over and over again. The unconscious person gets completely absorbed in these mental movies. They forget they have the power to change the channel, to turn down the volume, or to turn off the screen entirely. The emperor remembers. The emperor chooses. This choosing happens in the space between stimulus and response. Something happens to you. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your boss criticizes your work. Your partner says something hurtful. In that split second after the event occurs, before you react, there exists a space. Most people never notice this space because they react so quickly, so automatically. They have trained themselves to be incredibly efficient reaction machines. Stimulus, response, trigger, reaction, input, output. But you can learn to expand this space. You can learn to live in this gap between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. This is where your empire begins. In this space you have options. In this space you have power. In this space you remember who you are, instead of being swept away by what you feel. The practice is simple but not easy. When something triggers you, and something will trigger you today, catch yourself in that moment before you react. Take one conscious breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Remember that you are the emperor of your inner state, not a victim of external circumstances. This single breath creates a revolution. This one transforms you from reactor to responder, from victim to emperor, from unconscious to conscious. But the mind will resist this practice. The mind prefers its familiar patterns, even when those patterns cause suffering. The mind would rather be right than be free. The mind would rather stay in control than be at peace. This is why building your inner empire requires the same qualities that building any empire requires. The vision is simple. A life lived from consciousness rather than compulsion, from choice rather than chance, from response rather than reaction. Most people live their lives backwards. They try to change their external circumstances in order to feel better internally. They chase money to feel secure. They seek approval to feel worthy. They pursue pleasure to feel fulfilled. They accumulate possessions to feel abundant. But the emperor knows that this is impossible. External circumstances are effects, not causes. Your inner state creates your outer experience, not the other way around. When you establish your inner empire, when you become the undisputed ruler of your own consciousness, your external world begins to reflect this mastery. Not through magic, but through the natural consequence of clear thinking, calm emotions, and conscious action. People sense when they are in the presence of someone who has mastered themselves. There is a quality of presence, an energy of centeredness, a feeling of safety that such a person emanates. They become like a mountain, immovable, unshakable, trustworthy. This presence is magnetic. It draws opportunities, relationships, and resources naturally. Not because the emperor seeks these things, but because the emperor has become the kind of person that these things are naturally drawn to. The unconscious person pushes and struggles and forces and manipulates to get what they want. The emperor simply becomes someone worthy of what they desire, and what they desire flows toward them. This is the law of attraction operating at its highest level, not wishful thinking or positive affirmations, but the natural magnetism of a consciousness that has learned to generate its own fulfillment instead of seeking it from external sources. Your inner empire is built one conscious moment at a time, one conscious breath at a time, one conscious choice at a time. There are no giant leaps, no sudden transformations, no dramatic breakthroughs. Only the patient accumulation of moments when you remembered who you are, instead of being lost in what you feel. The path is narrow and steep. Most people start this journey with great enthusiasm and abandon it when they realize how much daily discipline it requires. They want the rewards of mastery without the responsibility of practice. But you are different. You understand that true power is earned, not given. You understand that lasting change happens slowly, not suddenly. You understand that the greatest victory is the victory over your own unconscious patterns. As you sit here right now listening to these words, your empire already exists. It exists in your capacity to be present to this moment instead of lost in thoughts about the past or future. It exists in your ability to choose your response to these ideas instead of automatically accepting or rejecting them. It exists in your power to remain centered regardless of what is happening around you. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is the practical foundation upon which every meaningful life is built. The emperor within you is not sleeping. The emperor within you is not weak. The emperor within you is simply waiting for you to remember who you are and claim the throne that has always been yours. The throne exists in the space between your thoughts. The crown exists in the awareness that watches your emotions without being controlled by them. The scepter exists in your power to choose your response to any situation. Your empire awaits. Your consciousness is the territory. Your breath is the bridge. Your choice is the key. The revolution begins now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect, now. This moment is your moment of coronation. This breath is your first act as emperor. This choice to remain present instead of drifting into unconsciousness is your first decree. The foundation has been laid. The cornerstone has been set. The blueprint has been revealed. Now comes the building. But building an empire requires more than awareness. It requires action. Not the frantic, desperate action of the unconscious person scrambling to fix their external world, but the precise, intentional action of the warrior who has learned to move from stillness. Do you know the difference between a fighter and a warrior? A fighter reacts to threats. A warrior responds to challenges. A fighter is driven by fear and anger. A warrior is guided by wisdom and purpose. A fighter exhausts himself battling enemies. A warrior conquers himself and finds no enemies remain. The warrior's path is not about becoming aggressive or confrontational. The warrior's path is about developing such mastery over your inner world that nothing in the outer world can knock you off balance. Every ancient tradition understood this principle. The samurai spent more time in meditation than in sword practice. The knights of old spent more time in prayer than in battle. The greatest generals in history were philosophers first, strategists second, and fighters only when absolutely necessary. They knew what modern people have forgotten. The battle that matters most is the one that takes place within your own consciousness. Right now, as you listen to these words, that battle is taking place. Part of you wants to transform, to become the emperor of your inner world. Another part of you wants to remain comfortable, to stick with familiar patterns even if they don't serve you. This is the eternal conflict between your highest potential and your habitual programming, between who you could become and who you have been. Between the emperor and the slave within your own mind. The warrior learns to recognize this internal conflict not as a problem to be solved, but as the very forge in which character is developed. Every moment of inner resistance, every impulse to react instead of respond, every temptation to return to unconscious patterns, these are not obstacles to your growth. These are the raw materials from which your mastery is built. Most people avoid discomfort at all costs. They seek the path of least resistance, the easy way, the comfortable choice. But the warrior understands that strength comes from resistance, wisdom comes from challenge, and power comes from doing what others will not do. The first discipline of the warrior is learning to create space between what happens and how you respond. You have already learned that this space exists. Now you must learn to expand it, to live in it, to make your home there. This is not a metaphor. This is literal training. When someone says something that normally would trigger anger in you, can you take one conscious breath? Before you speak, can you feel your feet on the ground, feel the air on your skin? Remember that you are not your emotional reaction. When unexpected news arrives, good or bad, can you receive it without immediately jumping into mental stories about what it means? Can you allow the information to simply be information without adding layers of interpretation, assumption, and projection? When your mind begins its familiar patterns of worry, can you observe these thoughts like clouds passing across the sky instead of being swept away by them? This is warrior training. This is how emperors are forged. The space between stimulus and response is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The more you practice living in this gap, the more natural it becomes to respond from consciousness rather than react from conditioning. But the mind will fight this practice with everything it has. The mind has spent years, perhaps decades, perfecting its automatic patterns. It knows exactly which buttons to push to make you react. It knows your triggers better than you do. The mind will tell you that taking time to respond is weakness. It will convince you that immediate reaction shows strength and authenticity. It will whisper that people will think you are slow or indecisive if you before speaking. These are lies. These are the desperate attempts of the unconscious mind to maintain control over your life. The truth is exactly the opposite. The person who responds from stillness commands respect. The individual who speaks from center carries authority. The one who acts from consciousness creates results that reactive people can never achieve. Think of the people you most admire. Think of the leaders, teachers, and individuals who have had the greatest positive impact on your life. Did they react emotionally to every situation? Did they speak impulsively whenever they felt triggered? Did they make important decisions while caught up in the storm of their emotions? Of course not. They possessed something that most people lack: the ability to remain centered regardless of circumstances. This centeredness is not a personality trait you are born with or without. This is a skill you can develop. This is a capacity you can strengthen. This is a power you can claim. The second discipline of the warrior is transforming emotional energy instead of suppressing it or expressing it unconsciously. Most people handle emotions in one of two destructive ways. They either stuff them down pretending they don't exist, which creates internal pressure that eventually explodes, or they express them immediately and unconsciously, which creates chaos in their relationships and regret in their hearts. The warrior learns a third way: emotional alchemy. When anger arises, instead of suppressing it or exploding with it, the warrior uses that energy as fuel for focused action. When fear appears, instead of running from it or being paralyzed by it, the warrior transforms that energy into heightened awareness and careful preparation. When sadness comes, instead of drowning in it or pushing it away, the warrior allows that energy to deepen compassion and strengthen connection to what truly matters. Every emotion carries energy. Most people waste this energy through unconscious expression or exhausting suppression. The warrior learns to harness this energy and direct it toward meaningful action. This is not about becoming emotionless. This is about becoming emotionally intelligent. This is about developing the capacity to feel deeply without being controlled by what you feel. The ancient warriors understood that emotions are like horses. A wild horse can kill you if you try to fight it. A broken horse has no spirit left to serve you. But a trained horse becomes your most trusted companion, carrying you wherever you need to go with power and grace. Your emotions, when properly trained, become the source of your greatest strength rather than the cause of your greatest weakness. But this training requires something that most people are unwilling to give: consistent daily practice. The warrior does not wait for the perfect moment to practice discipline. The warrior does not wait to feel motivated before taking right action. The warrior does not wait for circumstances to improve before choosing to respond from consciousness. The warrior practices when it is convenient and when it is not. The warrior maintains discipline when he feels like it and when he doesn't. The warrior chooses the conscious response when it is easy and when it requires tremendous effort. This is what separates the emperor from the pretender, the master from the student, the warrior from the wannabe. Most people are motivated by feelings. They take action when they feel like it and avoid action when they don't feel like it. They are slaves to their emotional weather, victims of their internal climate. The warrior has learned to generate motivation instead of waiting for it to appear. The warrior has discovered that discipline creates energy rather than depletes it. The warrior understands that right action taken consistently creates the very feelings that most people wait for before taking action. This reversal of cause and effect is one of the most important secrets of mastery. You do not need to feel confident to act confidently. You develop confidence by acting confidently even when you don't feel confident. You do not need to feel peaceful to respond peacefully. You create peace by choosing peaceful responses even when you feel agitated. You do not need to feel strong to act with strength. You build strength by taking strong action even when you feel weak. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around. This understanding transforms everything. Instead of being at the mercy of your emotional states, you become the creator of your emotional experience. Instead of waiting for the right feeling to take right action, you take right action to create the right feeling. The third discipline of the warrior is mastering the breath. Your breath is the most powerful tool you possess for instant transformation of your internal state. It is the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. It is the key that unlocks your natural capacity for calm, clear, centered action. Most people breathe like victims. Their breath is shallow, irregular, anxious. They hold their breath when stressed, gasp when surprised, pant when excited. Their breathing patterns reflect and reinforce their unconscious patterns of living. The warrior breathes like an emperor, deep, steady, intentional. Each breath is an act of claiming sovereignty over internal experience. Each exhale is a release of what no longer serves. Each inhale is an invitation for clarity and strength. Right now, notice your breathing. Don't change it yet, just observe it. Is it shallow or deep? Fast or slow? Regular or irregular? Relaxed or tense? Your breathing pattern right now is a perfect reflection of your current internal state. If you want to change your internal state, change your breathing pattern. Take one breath twice as deep as normal. Hold it for a moment at the top. Release it twice as slowly as normal. Feel the at the bottom before the next inhale begins. Did you feel the shift, that instant change in your internal experience? That movement from whatever you were feeling toward something calmer, clearer, more centered. This is your power. This is always available to you. This is the fastest way to step out of unconscious reactivity and into conscious response. The warrior learns to use breath as medicine. Anxious breath creates anxious experience. Angry breath fuels angry reactions. Peaceful breath generates peaceful responses. When you master your breath, you master your state. When you master your state, you master your responses. When you master your responses, you master your life. But breath work is not just about crisis management. The warrior uses conscious breathing as a foundation for all action. Before making important decisions, the warrior takes several conscious breaths to ensure the choice comes from clarity rather than confusion. Before entering challenging conversations, the warrior establishes rhythmic breathing to maintain centeredness regardless of what the other person says or does. Before beginning any task, the warrior uses intentional breathing to bring full presence and focused attention to the activity. This is not time-consuming. This takes seconds, not minutes. But these few seconds of conscious breathing create hours of conscious living. The fourth discipline of the warrior is choosing silence over noise. We live in a world that fears silence. Every space must be filled with sound. Every moment must be occupied with stimulation. Every must be eliminated with distraction. This constant noise is not neutral. It is programming. It keeps people on the surface of their own experience, never sinking into the depths where true power resides. The warrior understands that silence is not empty space to be filled. Silence is fertile ground from which wisdom grows. Silence is the womb of conscious action. Silence is where you remember who you are beneath all the roles you play and masks you wear. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because in silence they meet themselves without distraction. In silence they cannot avoid their own thoughts, cannot escape their own feelings, cannot hide from their own truth. But the warrior seeks out silence like a treasure hunter seeks gold. The warrior knows that everything worth finding exists in the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the stillness between breaths, in the between words. This does not mean the warrior becomes antisocial or stops speaking. This means the warrior learns to speak from silence rather than from noise. Words that come from silence carry weight. Actions that emerge from stillness create lasting results. When you speak from silence, people listen. When you act from stillness, your actions have power. When you live from the quiet center within yourself, your very presence becomes a force for transformation in the world. But developing comfort with silence requires practice. Start small. Instead of immediately filling every quiet moment with mental chatter, allow some gaps. Instead of talking as soon as someone stops speaking, allow some space. Instead of reaching for distractions the moment you feel bored, allow some emptiness. In these spaces you will begin to hear something you may not have heard in years. Your own inner, not the of your conditioning, not the of your fears, not the of your desires, but the of your deepest wisdom. This has been there all along, but it speaks quietly. It cannot compete with the noise of unconscious living. It can only be heard in the silence of conscious presence. The warrior learns to distinguish between the of your wisdom and the of conditioning. The of your conditioning is loud, urgent, emotional. It speaks in absolutes and demands immediate action. It is driven by fear and creates more problems than it solves. The of your wisdom is quiet, patient, clear. It speaks in possibilities and suggests considered response. It is rooted in love and creates solutions that serve everyone involved. Learning to hear and follow this inner of wisdom is perhaps the most practical skill you can develop. This will guide you through every challenge, every decision, every crossroads you encounter. But you can only hear it in silence. You can only trust it through practice. You can only follow it by choosing wisdom over impulse, consciousness over conditioning, response over reaction. The warrior's path is not complicated, but it is demanding. It requires daily commitment to practices that most people avoid: stillness instead of constant motion, silence instead of constant noise, consciousness instead of constant distraction. These practices do not add more to your life. They strip away everything that is not essential, everything that does not serve your highest good, everything that keeps you trapped in unconscious patterns. What remains is your essential nature, aware, powerful, peaceful, wise. This is not something you become. This is something you are. The practices simply remove the obstacles that prevent you from recognizing and expressing what has always been true about you. The emperor within you is not waiting to be created. The emperor within you is waiting to be revealed. Every conscious breath, every intentional, every choice to respond rather than react removes another layer of dust from the diamond of your true nature. As you continue to practice these disciplines, something remarkable begins to happen. The gap between who you are and who you pretend to be begins to close. The difference between your public self and your private self begins to disappear. You begin to live with an integrity that creates authentic power in every area of your life. People begin to sense that you are different, not different in an artificial or forced way, but different in a way that feels real, solid, trustworthy. They may not be able to name what they sense, but they feel safer in your presence, calmer around your energy, more centered in your company. This is the natural magnetism of someone who has stopped fighting themselves, stopped battling their own thoughts and emotions, stopped resisting their own experience. When you are at peace with yourself, you become a source of peace for others. The warrior's path leads to this, a life where your external actions are perfectly aligned with your internal values, where your public behavior matches your private character, where your daily choices reflect your deepest wisdom. This alignment creates a power that cannot be shaken by external circumstances, cannot be diminished by other people's opinions, cannot be taken away by changing conditions. This is the power of the emperor. This is the strength of the warrior. This is the peace of the sage. And this is your birthright. This is what awaits you on the other side of consistent practice, daily discipline, and unwavering commitment to consciousness over conditioning. The path continues. The practices deepen. The transformation accelerates. But what does it actually look like to live as the emperor of your inner world? What changes when you stop being ruled by circumstances and start ruling from consciousness? Everything changes, and nothing changes. You still wake up in the same bed. You still face the same responsibilities. You still encounter difficult people and challenging situations. The external conditions of your life may remain exactly the same, but you, the one experiencing these conditions, you become completely different. The emperor does not live in a different world. The emperor lives differently in the world. Watch how most people start their day. The alarm jolts them from sleep. Before their feet touch the floor, their mind races toward their problems. They stumble to the bathroom while mentally rehearsing their worries. They gulp coffee while scrolling through news designed to trigger anxiety and outrage. They rush out the door already exhausted by battles they haven't even fought yet. This is not living, this is surviving in a state of perpetual emergency. The emperor begins differently. The emperor awakens before being awakened. Instead of being dragged into consciousness by external demands, the emperor chooses consciousness as the first act of the day. Before checking any device, before consuming any information, before engaging with any external input, the emperor spends time in silence. Not meditation, though that may be part of it, but simple conscious presence, feeling the breath, noticing the body, acknowledging whatever thoughts and emotions are present without being controlled by them, setting an intention for how to move through the day, not what to accomplish, but how to be while accomplishing it. This is not luxury. This is necessity. Just as you would never begin a long journey without first determining your destination and plotting your route, you should never begin a day without first establishing your internal compass. Most people live reactively, bouncing from one external demand to another like pinballs in a machine. They wonder why they feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and out of control. They are out of control because they never took control. The emperor takes control not of external circumstances, that is impossible, but of internal responses to external circumstances. This is the only control that matters, and the only control that is actually possible. When you live from this internal sovereignty, your entire relationship with time changes. Most people feel like time is chasing them, pressuring them, running out on them. They are always behind, always rushing, always wishing they had more time. The emperor has the same 24 hours as everyone else, but experiences time completely differently. Because the emperor is fully present to each moment becomes fuller, richer, more complete. Because the emperor responds from consciousness rather than reacts from compulsion, less energy is wasted on regret, worry, and internal conflict. Time becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Tasks get completed with less effort. Decisions get made with less struggle. Problems get solved with less drama. This is not because external circumstances cooperate more readily, though they often do, but because internal resistance has been eliminated. When you stop fighting yourself, you stop creating the very friction that makes everything harder than it needs to be. Your relationships transform in ways that may surprise you. Most people relate to others from their needs, their fears, their desires, their expectations. They are constantly trying to get something from other people: approval, validation, security, entertainment, love. This creates relationships based on transaction rather than connection, manipulation rather than authenticity, taking rather than giving. The emperor relates to others from fullness rather than emptiness, from strength rather than neediness, from love rather than fear. Because the emperor has learned to generate internal security, validation, and peace, the emperor can offer these gifts to others instead of seeking them from others. This shift from taking to giving, from needing to serving, from grasping to releasing transforms every interaction. People respond to you differently when you approach them from wholeness rather than brokenness. They trust you more because you are not trying to get anything from them. They respect you more because you respect yourself. They feel safe with you because you feel safe with yourself. But here is what may surprise you most: when you stop trying to get love, approval, and validation from others, you begin receiving more love, approval, and validation than you ever did when you were desperately seeking it. This is not a strategy. This is not manipulation. This is simply the natural consequence of authentic self-possession. People are drawn to those who have found their center because they hope to learn how to find their own. Your work life transforms as well. Most people work from desperation, fear, and external pressure. They are motivated by what they must avoid rather than what they want to create. They spend more energy managing their anxiety about their work than actually doing their work. The emperor works from inspiration, purpose, and internal drive. Work becomes an expression of consciousness rather than an escape from insecurity. Quality improves not because of longer hours, but because of greater presence. Results improve not because of harder effort, but because of clearer intention. You begin to attract opportunities that align with your values rather than accepting whatever opportunities appear out of fear of missing out. You begin to make decisions based on what serves your highest good rather than what temporarily reduces your anxiety. Career becomes calling, job becomes craft, work becomes worship. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurs in your relationship with challenge and difficulty. Most people see problems as evidence that something is wrong with their life. They resist challenges, avoid difficulties, and interpret obstacles as signs that they are on the wrong path. The emperor understands that challenges are not punishments to endure, but opportunities to grow. Every difficult person you encounter is a teacher, showing you where you still react instead of respond. Every obstacle you face is training for your next level of mastery. Every crisis you navigate is preparation for greater responsibility. When you stop seeing challenges as problems and start seeing them as curriculum, your entire experience of life changes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this here to teach me?" Instead of feeling victimized by difficulties, you feel strengthened by them. This does not mean you enjoy suffering or seek out problems. This means you receive whatever comes with equanimity, extract the lesson, and move forward with greater wisdom. The emperor knows that everything is temporary. Good times are temporary, bad times are temporary. Success is temporary, failure is temporary, health is temporary, sickness is temporary. This understanding creates tremendous freedom. When times are good, you enjoy them without clinging to them. When times are difficult, you endure them without being crushed by them. You live fully in each moment while holding all moments lightly. Most people suffer more from their resistance to what is happening than from what is actually happening. They exhaust themselves fighting reality instead of flowing with it while shaping what they can control. The emperor learns to distinguish between what can be changed and what must be accepted, what requires action and what requires patience, what needs attention and what needs to be ignored. This discernment, knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to hold on and when to let go, this is the practical wisdom that emerges from inner mastery. But living as an emperor is not a destination you reach and then coast. Mastery is not an achievement you attain once and possess forever. Consciousness is not a state you enter and never leave. Living as an emperor is a practice you must choose again and again, moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. There will be days when you forget. There will be moments when you react instead of respond. There will be situations that trigger your old patterns despite all your training. This is not failure, this is human. The emperor is not perfect. The emperor is conscious of imperfection. When you catch yourself falling back into unconscious patterns, you do not punish yourself or abandon the past. You simply return to consciousness, return to your breath, return to your center, again and again and again. This returning is not a sign of weakness. This returning is the practice. Every time you notice you have been unconscious and choose to become conscious again, you strengthen your capacity for awareness. Every time you catch yourself reacting and shift back to responding, you deepen your mastery. The goal is not to never fall. The goal is to fall less often and recover more quickly when you do fall. As your practice matures, something beautiful begins to happen. Your very presence becomes a gift to the world. Not because you try to help or heal or fix others, but because your own inner peace creates space for others to find their peace. Your calmness in chaos gives others permission to remain calm. Your responses instead of reactions show others that conscious choice is possible. Your centeredness in uncertainty demonstrates that security comes from within, not from external circumstances. You become like a lighthouse, not moving around frantically trying to save every ship, but standing firm in your position, shining your light consistently, allowing others to navigate by your example. This influence happens naturally, without effort or intention. It is simply the inevitable result of someone who has learned to live from consciousness rather than compulsion, from wisdom rather than worry, from love rather than fear. But perhaps the greatest gift of living as an emperor is the peace that comes from finally being aligned with yourself. No more internal conflict between who you are and who you pretend to be. No more energy wasted maintaining false personas, no more exhaustion from fighting your own nature. You become integrated, whole, authentic. Your inner world and outer world begin to match. Your private thoughts and public actions begin to align. Your deepest values and daily choices begin to harmonize. This integrity creates a power that cannot be faked, bought, or taken away. It is the power of someone who knows who they are and has the courage to be that person consistently, regardless of external pressure or opinion. As we reach the end of this exploration, remember where we began. We started with a paradox: the greatest emperors who ever lived were actually powerless in the conventional sense. They did not rule through force but through presence. They did not control through manipulation, but through mastery of themselves. You now understand what this means. True power is not the ability to control others or circumstances. True power is the ability to remain centered regardless of what others do or what circumstances arise. True strength is not the capacity to impose your will on the world. True strength is the ability to align your actions with your wisdom, even when you feel like acting from emotion. True freedom is not the absence of limitations or responsibilities. True freedom is the ability to choose your response to any limitation or responsibility you face. This power, this strength, this freedom, none of it depends on your external circumstances. All of it emerges from your internal practice. All of it is available to you right now in this moment, with your next breath, through your next choice. The empire you have been building throughout this exploration is not metaphorical. It is real. It exists in your capacity to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. It is established in your ability to feel your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. It is fortified each time you choose to respond from consciousness rather than react from conditioning. Your crown is your awareness. Your scepter is your breath. Your throne is the present moment. Your subjects are your thoughts, emotions, and impulses, no longer ruling you but serving your highest good. This empire requires no external recognition or validation. It needs no approval from others to exist. It demands no resources beyond what you already possess. It is the only kingdom that can never be conquered, the only power that can never be taken away, the only inheritance that can never be lost. Take your throne. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready. Now. This moment is your coronation. This breath is your first royal decree. This choice to remain present instead of drifting into unconsciousness is your first act as sovereign of your own experience. The revolution is complete. The emperor has awakened. The empire is established. Rule wisely, rule consciously, rule with love. Your kingdom awaits your conscious leadership. Your life awaits your awakened presence. Your world awaits the gifts that only you can give when you live as the emperor of your inner domain. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The moment is now.